So right now, I'm going to go into detail about why I've started more or less boycotting major fast food global mega chains and why you should too. Now, I'm going to preface by saying, no, it hasn't been a hard boycott. I mean, I haven't eaten at McDonald's in over a year, but like, yeah, I've made a few exceptions here and there, largely based on circumstance. Because okay, there are certain situations you might get into where fast food might be like not just fast food, but like mega chain fast food might be your only option. Like at certain times of the day, there's literally nothing else open, like at in the middle of the night or the very early morning. Sometimes you're just really in a rush, or at times you could be in the middle of nowhere and there's literally no other option. But by and large, I find in the vast majority of situations that's not the case. Like as I said, I haven't eaten at McDonald's in over a year. I don't think I've eaten at Burger King, Subway, um, KFC, Domino's, Taco Bell, or Pizza Hut in the same time frame, or Wendy's. I have had the Popeyes chicken sandwich a couple times in that time frame, but otherwise, when looking at like the biggest global mega chains, I haven't eaten at any of them in that time frame. And I have eaten actually more so while traveling in the US at some of the regional chains. Like I've eaten at In-N-Out Burger, Culver's, and Freddy's a number of times while traveling there. I feel a bit less guilty about that because they're not global mega chains, but I do feel also at times maybe there were times when maybe I could have tried a local place instead. So I feel iffy about those ones. Those ones aren't really the problem to the same extent the global chains like McDonald's are. But at the same time, I do think local restaurants are the best option. So I'm going to go into detail about why. Number one, because these global mega chains are promoters of shitty values. Like if you look at McDonald's, they have their 365 black campaign, their glorification of like anti-whiteness and white guilt. And a lot of the other mega chains do this. This is typical of major corporations in basically all industries. However, that being said, this is not the main reason because many local restaurants will put a Black Lives Matter sticker in their window or a pride flag, like a rainbow flag in their window. And you know what? I will still eat there if they have good food. So ultimately, while that is a reason, it's not the main reason. Nor is health the main reason because, in general, I think most restaurant food is unhealthy with the exception of like certain specifically healthy places. I am not sure if food like McDonald's is more unhealthy than like your typical like local burger place, or if like Pizza Hut or Domino's Pizza is more unhealthy than your typical local pizza place. So while health is an issue, it's not necessarily the main issue. Although I do think health is kind of an issue because one thing about the mega chains is that their lower prices enable you to eat there more often, which makes it more easy to become addicted, more easy on your wallet to become addicted. And that's actually a self-imposed restraint mechanism that local restaurants have that prevent you from being too unhealthy or too addicted, is that frankly the food is too expensive to eat all the time. And that's actually a good thing. So that's the thing. Like when people talk about like the amount of value per dollar, that's actually a very bad way of looking at it. And that's how you become obese when like looking at food from like the value per dollar perspective. What you should be looking at instead is like your overall health and the experience you get out of it rather than like a value per dollar analysis. In general, value per dollar is just a very bad way of looking at things. It's also kind of, to be honest, a poor man's way of looking at things. And if you think like a poor person, you're probably going to stay poor. I'm sorry for saying that, but it's just true. And it's a problem that many people who have that poverty mindset have, which is buying repeatedly a ton of things that are cheap. And they actually often end up spending more money in the long run. And so, yeah, that is a factor. Like health is definitely a factor, and money, because ironically, even though the fast food mega chains are cheaper, their cheapness enables you to eat more of it. And that's often the outcome. So that would be a factor, but that's not the main factor. The main factor, the number one main factor as to why I've boycotted the mega chains is because I believe in the idea of community. I believe in the local, the national, the regional, and not the globalized, homogenized nothingness. And that's what I think it is. It's kind of like the nothing in the never ending story. It's basically like when you go from place to place and everywhere looks the same. And you see it in America, in Canada, especially in the suburbs, especially on these like strips, the places that look like Breezewood, Pennsylvania from that hideous picture, and all the fucking these stupid fucking suburbanite individualist Americanist car culturist defenders of Breezewood, they always point out every single time, oh, that's just an interchange off the highway, that's not an actual community. So what if it's just an interchange? There's a million places in our suburbs, our towns, that our cities that look just like this, and you're fucking lying if you could say otherwise. I could name off the top of my head like 20 specific places. I'm not going to, because I'd be doxing myself by doing that, by talking about the specific locations I frequented. But like I could name like 20 specific places in southern Ontario that look just like Breezewood, Pennsylvania. And I know people, everybody can. If you live in Canada, if you live in the United States, I mean, unless you're one of those people who like lives in Manhattan Island and never leaves it. I mean, if you live in Canada or the US, you encounter places like this on a routine basis. They're fucking everywhere, and they're ugly, and they're just a blight on the fucking landscape. And they're always filled with the fast food mega chains. The mega chains love these places. It's their favorite type of place. They love drive-throughs. They love sprawl. They always contribute toward making communities uglier and more sprawled. And not only that, but they just destroy the fabric of community because everywhere feels the same because it has the same restaurants. It's like you can't sample unique local fare if there is no unique local fare. And frankly, even with like the staple foods like burgers, hot dogs, pizza, poutine, burritos, tacos, whatever, even with the staple foods, it still tastes more unique at a local restaurant than at a mega chain. Because at a mega chain, it's literally exactly the same everywhere. Whereas at local restaurants, it might be similar, but there's slight differences that often give it that great flavor, that great taste that distinguishes it. And that's one thing. Like, I really think that it's important to value the local. Like, because I've been to some small towns in the middle of nowhere. Okay, this is not doxing myself because I do not live anywhere near this place, but the small town of Ignis in northern Ontario, one of the more depressing places I've ever been. It was this like basically the small town that's declining in population along Highway 17 in northern Ontario. And literally almost every restaurant there was just a fast food place. Like I think there was like a Subway and like, I don't know, one or two other ones of the mega chains. And I don't know if there were any local restaurants at all. I think there was like one Chinese place and that was it. So there were basically no like local non-ethnic restaurants in the entire town. It was really sad. And that's what happens. You know, people, you get the kind of society that you pay for. You vote with your dollars. And if you constantly give your money to these fast food places, don't be surprised when they're the only restaurants left standing, like in Ignis. And again, Ignis isn't unique. There's plenty of little towns like that. It's not just the small towns either. Like I see it in the suburbs. Well, frankly, the suburbs are a fake place to begin with. So of course they're going to be filled with fake restaurants. Like, that goes without saying. But like, again, it's just becoming the norm in so many places. And these independent restaurants were suffering quite a bit under the COVID lockdowns. A few of my favorite restaurants got shut down for good, like Adamson Barbecue in Toronto and Frankie Tomato's Italian Buffet in Markham. Okay, to be fair, Frankie Tomato's, I get why some people would criticize that place as like a mockery of Italian food, but you know what? At least it was like a fun local place. It wasn't some mega chain. But nonetheless, okay, like a lot of good restaurants did suffer and get closed down because of the COVID lockdowns. And the fast food restaurants, on the other hand, they were doing record business, and it was really disgusting. That's what I saw in the local community, like McDonald's drive-through lineups into the streets. While when I went to get takeout from the local restaurants, because you could only get takeout at the time, I was literally single-handedly keeping them in business. They were thanking me. They were personally thanking me for keeping them in business, and it's taken a fucking toll on me, okay? I ate so much of this delicious restaurant, like local restaurant food, that my stomach is actually kind of fucked up now. So, yeah, it's taken a toll on me. I basically fought a one-man battle to keep these restaurants in business while every other fucking person was either just staying home all the time or going to McDonald's all the time, to the point where the fucking lineups at the drive-thru were into the street. And that made me angry. It made me very angry because, as I say, you get the society that you pay for. And all these people are like, oh, why are my favorite restaurants closing? It's like, well, the reason they're closing is because you didn't support them. And this is a flaw in many people's thinking, is they think about things in terms of me, me, me. They think like, well, I don't want to pay $20 for takeout. It's like, you're not paying $20 for takeout. You're paying $20 so your favorite restaurant can still be there when the lockdowns end. And again, okay, at the time, many people didn't believe the lockdowns would ever end, and for good reason, because the government was flat out telling us that the lockdowns would never end. But at the same time, yeah, people should have been thinking, okay, there's a chance these things will end, and maybe we should support our favorite restaurants so they'll still be there afterward. So that's another thing. But in addition to all the sameness, the nothingness, the cultural homogenization, another problem with these fast food megachains is this is another flaw in human psychology, in many people's psychology, something that I've noticed, and it goes far beyond fast food. It goes to a lot of other things also, is that a lot of people are just slaves to nostalgia and to familiarity, to the point where it's almost like a form of Stockholm syndrome, where it's like people, they want things that make them feel nostalgic for their childhood, even if these things are objectively bad. They crave familiarity. They crave things that make them feel like that feel familiar, that they remember from their childhood, even if these things suck. And it's a problem with a lot of people, is people can be very easily emotionally and psychologically manipulated through nostalgia into liking things that are objectively shitty. Like a lot of this fast food mega chain stuff, a lot of their food that is either mediocre or shitty compared to like the food of much better local restaurants. That'd be one example. Movies like, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, or the Jurassic World films, or probably this new Ghostbusters film with Paul Rudd, which I haven't seen. Like movies that and TV shows that really, really play hard on the nostalgia and trick you into thinking that they're great when either they're actually shit or mediocre. Now, Stranger Things is very guilty of this. However, even I have to admit, season 4 was pretty good. It was really good. Like season 4 improved the show a lot, and it improved the show because it actually did more than simply providing nostalgia. It actually told like a fun story, and it was actually scary and intense and like interesting. And it did things beyond simply jerking itself off about the 80s, which is basically what season 2 and 3 were just a massive 10-hour-long 80s jerk-off fest. Mostly, for the most part. Even season 2 and 3 had a few good moments, but like for the most part, it was an 80s jerk-off fest. And that's the thing about nostalgia. Like I do think that people can be very emotionally manipulated by it into thinking that something is great when actually it's shitty or mediocre. And it's the same with fast food. It's like, yeah, okay, some fast food restaurants are okay. Like, I mean, yeah, I will admit it. The McDonald's double cheeseburger is delicious. But is everything at McDonald's that great? Not really. Honestly, I think the Big Mac is pretty mediocre. The quarter pounder is pretty mediocre. Even the double cheeseburger, it's delicious, but it's delicious in a way where it doesn't really taste like a real burger. It's enjoyable in the way that, like, I don't know, it's enjoyable in the same way that watching porn can be enjoyable, or maybe having promiscuous sex. I don't know what's the better metaphor in this case, but whereas like a really good meal at a local restaurant is more like having sex with somebody who you love and who you're also very attracted to. I would say that would be an applicable metaphor. Whereas like some fast food isn't even that. Like a lot of fast food is just shitty. Like Burger King is not that great. I would say the fucking Burger King Whopper is like watching a shitty porn movie, or like having promiscuous sex with somebody who's not even that hot. That would be the analogy there. So it's like, again, it's an issue of like authenticity versus lack of authenticity, of the local versus the global, of high quality versus poor quality. And I mean, again, like I'm not saying fast food is incapable of being good quality. Like I will admit, the Popeyes chicken sandwich is legitimately really good, and their fried chicken is legitimately really good. But at the same time, you can't deny that a Popeyes does not add as much to its community in terms of just that sense of local culture compared to like a local fried chicken place. So even in cases where the food quality is good, and I would say on average, the food quality in fast food mega chains is definitely far below that of like really good local restaurants. But nonetheless, I will say, despite the quality issue, it's also just an issue of simply authenticity and adding a sense of local culture and a feeling like you're in a place and not simply a carbon copy, a copy of a copy of a copy of everywhere else. And that's another thing. I think a lot of people, I think it's often laziness that like people just don't want to like go on Google and like look up reviews of local restaurants. They want to go to some place where they know what they're going to get because they can't be bothered to like spend 5 minutes doing a little bit of research. Like I think that's frankly also a problem with a lot of people and why they keep going to these mega chains. It's also, yeah, familiarity. Like a lot of people, they're not willing to take a little risk. They're not willing to be like, okay, if I go to this local place, there's a chance it'll be amazing and there's a chance it'll be not so amazing. They're going to be like, no, I'd rather just go with like the mediocre 5 out of 10 fast food from the mega chain because at least I know what I'm going to get. I think that's the problem with a lot of people. They cling too much to familiarity and nostalgia, and they cling to what's safe, what they know, and they won't take a risk. And that's the thing, again, it's like, it's why people cherish suburbia so much, even though there's many aspects of suburbia that just suck, because it's often just what they know. It's where they were born, and it's where they grew up. And that's why, again, like fast food and suburbia are kind of synonymous. So it really plays upon the same emotions, the same thought processes, the same inherent internal biases that people have, the preference for the familiar, the safe, the nostalgic. And again, like I mean, sometimes these preferences can be a good thing, but often they're not. And often they're easily emotionally manipulated by major corporations that use it to their benefit to sell a product. That's why fucking The Force Awakens was like the biggest movie of all time, even though it was okay. Like it was nowhere near as shitty as Last Jedi and fucking Rise of Skywalker. But did The Force Awakens deserve to be the highest grossing movie of all time? No, it did not. But you know why it was? Because it played really, really, really heavily on nostalgia. In fact, I can't think of a movie ever made that played more heavily on nostalgia and familiarity than The Force Awakens. So again, like if you want to ask why people do this, like with fast food or with whatever else, why they gravitate toward stuff that's like mediocre and not that great, and they gravitate it toward it over and over and over again, that's a big reason. Familiarity and nostalgia. And it's something that sometimes people just have to get past, because it's like a lot of stuff that people are familiar and nostalgic for, just like the fact that like people cry over Blockbuster Video, but they don't even think about like all the architecture that was destroyed in Europe during World War II, just shows how much nostalgia is a hell of a drug that overwhelms logic and reason and good taste and just turns people into these creatures constantly seeking familiarity. So yeah, I mean that's part of it, but there's a lot of other reasons. Point is, I'm boycotting, not a hard boycott, but I'm mostly boycotting fast food mega chains, and that's why I think you should as well. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it.